Hi, Ace and Beaky here, and I wanted to actually talk about something good in the media for once. What? Forrest is talking about something good in the media? Well, yeah, besides Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. The thing is that I just saw a short, like, literally 2-minute video from Adult Swim's Robot Chicken that, out of anything, used the Ninja Turtles to kind of expose what was really wrong with the militarization of the police and this epidemic of police brutality? Now, a lot of people have already voiced their opinions on it, that, some people on the right say it's not a problem, that people are exaggerating it. Some people on the right say that it's totally justified and we need to be borderline fascist. And some people on the left, they talk about it, but they make it like it's all about race, and that the only solution is to, be communist, of course, and blame everything on white people. The thing is that whenever I watched this thing, it's called Pizza Brutality. It's a robot chicken skit, where they use the slow-mo, where they use the animation with their toys to make like these little skits. It's kind of like what Wallace and Gromit did, but instead of with clay, they just move around action figures and then they animate little talking mouths. It's really cool, and it's kind of impressive that the fact that they're able to do so much with an idea that's very simple at first, but it still requires talent. The thing is that whether I agree with Robot Chicken's take on everything or whether I appreciate all of their humor, I kind of feel, from my point of view, that they hit the nail on the head by making a statement, but it was less about a political statement of left versus right and more of like, okay, this is a problem in society and here's how we play it out, and we're trying not to be specifically left-wing or right-wing about it. Well, they weren't trying. They were probably just expressing their opinion. But here's the deal. So whenever you watch Pizza Brutality, you see that they basically shows the Ninja Turtles in their underground sewer, and the Ninja Turtles, which are ultimately good people, but sometimes have too much testosterone for their own good, they just realize that they are talking about how Washington has passed a bill that basically just guts and hands over military gear to the police. But as a side note, so that we can use the Ninja Turtles, it also said, as a side note, also certain government-approved groups of vigilantes. So the government just basically gave the police and approved vigilantes, if you will, it's seen as an extension of the police, military gear. And Shredder, their master, their fatherly figure, whether he's actually their father or not, Shredder, the wise sensei, is just calmly trying to warn their sons that it's like, hey guys, my children, military gear is way more powerful than just, your regular ninja weapons and police gear. It's way more powerful, and he has a point, because military gear is meant to search and destroy. It's meant to kill people and break things. Now, there comes a time where you need a very small bit of that. As the Bible says, and as history has proven, the person who upholds the law does not carry the sword in vain. But there's a difference between not having a sword and having a sword as a last resort, and it being the only offensive weapon that you have. The Ninja Turtles, even though their swords and katanas can kill people, for the most part, they try to not kill regular humans. They try to just knock them out with the flats of their blades or their fists or their feet, or rely more heavily on the nunchucks and the bow staff, because even though those can still kill you, they're better at non-lethally killing people. But they also keep the swords around because whenever they're fighting something like a robot or a giant bug that's not sentient, then it's okay to slice and dice. Although if you read the original 1980s Ninja Turtles, they did kill people, but it was less about law enforcement. It was more about, underground feudalism between two clans, and they just happened to be the most righteous clan. But I digress. Going back to Pizza Brutality. So in Pizza Brutality, we see a quick scene where Donatello, the tech guy, says that they just got a bunch of military shit given to them by the government because they're kind of like an extension of law enforcement. And the thing is that even though the Ninja Turtles are heroes and good people, it immediately goes to their head. Sure, they tried to kind of trim its its claws, so to speak, and it shoots out hot pizza instead of like something that will slice people to bits. But whenever they go out and they stop the Foot Clan, they do rightly take out, those ninja soldiers, because those are bad people. They are going to kill people, and they do non-lethally take them down. But then it shows kind of how, with the police, how military gear can go to your head. How whenever you have a hammer, you start seeing all of your problems as nails. That whenever the turtles, even if they're not evil, it's kind of like it just got to them to where they wanted to they had something and it was a solution looking for a problem. They wanted to apply their new toy that they wanted to play with in any situation that they could. So after they shot Shredder with the pizza thing, and yes, Shredder's a bad person who probably deserves the death penalty, the thing is that after they shot Shredder in the face with the pizza, and it had basically maimed him because it was so freaking hot, he was already on the ground. So he was out of the fight. They could tag him and bag him and take him to court and have the jury decide whether he deserves life in prison or death or whatever. But the thing is that it was kind of like, Shredder's on the ground screaming in pain because the pizza's melting his face. And maybe morally you don't feel sorry for a guy who's basically an underground, Japanese-style feudal lord, but in organized crime. And as a side note, even though feudalism is pretty much long gone in actual government, the closest thing to medieval feudalism, whether it's kind of like European or Asian, is organized crime. Organized crime has the most parallels to modern-day feudalism. I guess the thing is that some people are thinking that feudalism is kind of creeping into the economy with certain too-big-to-fail monopoly corporations. And some people have basically said that the military kind of has a feudal mentality, not necessarily a structure, but a feudal mentality that kind of translate into structure from time to time. People said that during the Civil War, the South looked like it was about to become a reincarnation of feudalism, that it was the closest thing to a monarchy and how it worked. There's also this thing called medievalism, where basically it's like you could have a republic and a democracy and all that, but your culture is very medieval. You have a very medieval culture. And there was a spike of that after 9/11. But I digress. I was just basically, that was kind of a, like we're in Wikipedia, that was kind of an off branch where it was, kind of like how there's, whether it's feudalism in structure or more medievalism in culture, that was just kind of explaining some parallels between organized crime and feudalism. But the thing is that back to pizza brutality. The thing is that, so the Ninja Turtles go up to Shredder, and he's out for the count, and they're electrocuting him. And he said, "Stop resisting." And he basically said, "I'm not resisting. I can't even see. There's melted cheese in my face. So I'm writhing around." So he's writhing around in pain. And yeah, he's a bad guy. He needs to go to jail and get tried for whatever horrible thing he did. And if he deserves the death penalty, so be it. He is an evil person. But the thing is, at that point, according to the law and the morality surrounding that law, Shredder was down for the count. And this is what's wrong with a lot of police brutality. Somebody who's writhing in pain because they got shot in the face or because the police tackled them and broke their arm, at that point they're wailing and screaming on the ground, but they're not resisting the cops. They're just wailing and screaming because they're in horrific pain. And you can even justify the police doing this, but what follows afterwards is where there's a lot of bullshit involved. Whenever somebody is writhing in pain and then you continue to attack them like they're resisting you, that is not okay. That is what's wrong with police brutality. Whenever somebody's already down and they're surrendering and you're beating the fuck out of them, or whether they're just writhing in pain because they got knocked down, and whether they deserve it or not, while they're writhing in pain, they're not resisting you. You've already got them down. You don't need to punish them anymore. That's where justice turns into revenge, or should I say sadism. And that's not right, because if you're going to wear a badge, that has an awesome amount of responsibility. So the thing is that the cartoon goes on and it shows them, they constantly electrocute Shredder, even though he's not resisting, even though he's got melted pizza in his face that's burning the fuck out of his face, and he's flipping out because he's in pain, but he's down for the count. He's defeated. He's not fighting back. You won. You won. And you don't need to be beating up on somebody who's already surrendered. And that's what's wrong with a lot of police training and a lot of police brutality. So we see that even though they had already won against Shredder and they could tag him, bag him, and send him to the courts to decide his fate, one of them just kept electrocuting him until he passed out and didn't do anything to stop the pizza from melting his face. He had already won, and now he's being tortured after he's already being defeated. After he's already surrendered. That's fucked up. And they killed him. And then the thing is that the turtles said, "Oh, you saw that. He was coming right at me, right?" And their brothers, they're still not horrible people, but they're not taking responsibility for their actions and trying to fix the problem. They're like, "Oh yeah, he totally came after me." And it's like, so what do? I guess we go home. So this shows how even good people in the police force can be kind of used to be part of the problem. And they're not part of the problem because they're white. They're not part of the problem because they're Republican. They're not part of the problem because police are all bad. I respect the law enforcement as an ideal, but it needs to have better. If you're going to have that much power, with great power comes great responsibility, since we're already talking superheroes here. So the more power that you have, you need to be held to a higher standard. I know that not everybody's religious, but for those who are religious, police should act, if you're a Christian, then you should want the police to act at least reasonably Christian. I don't mean go to church on Sunday and pray to Jesus. I mean the ethics that one religion has that most other religions have, that common decency have. They should be chivalrous. If you want us to treat police like they're highly honored knights in shining armor, then they have to be knights in shining armor. And even if these are people who are actually well-meaning people, but they're just overzealous overkill, even if they don't have a bad bone in their body, even if they don't have a racist bone in their body, you can't just give all these guns, these military-grade guns, to people who haven't had the same discipline and training and morals and maturity. And, you can't expect a child to be mature with a gun until you teach them how to be mature with a gun. People who are gun owners and pro-Second Amendment but are mature and moral and not crazy, they know that people need to learn how damn dangerous a fucking gun is so that you can respect it as a tool and not as a toy. It's not a toy that you play with. You have to have a respect for it. You have to realize that if you use this thing wrong, not only can you end somebody else's life, but you can, you have to take responsibility for your actions. And if you use this wrong, this could get you in jail or killed. That this is not something that you fuck with. And when people had that sense of responsibility with firearms and a community spirit where they were less inclined to pull the trigger on somebody even if they deserved it, that they genuinely would be in the heart and mindset of pretty much only using it whenever they genuinely felt threatened, that they would rather give a warning shot to scare off robbers than shoot robbers without a warning, or to shoot them in the back when they were running away. That's whenever people could kind of be trusted with guns more. You see, I respect the Second Amendment, and I don't even really want to make any new regulations, because I feel that the problem is people lacking community spirit, people lacking ethics. We live in very Machiavellian times where we're having the fallout of medievalism, where we have paranoization, we have social balkanization, we have identity politics, we have tribalism, where nobody trusts anybody and everybody's kind of out for themselves and everybody thinks very ill of the other person, and people aren't willing to give each other the benefit of the doubt. That if we can get past that, then yeah, maybe the right people can do the whole Second Amendment thing and it'll be fine. And also, I also need to make sure that that we are saying that we're for the Second Amendment, we don't blindly take the side of the police, we don't blindly take the side of the Republicans, and we don't look the other way when gun shops make a black man who has no criminal record jump through 5 times more hoops to legally get a gun than they do for a white man who's got a couple of skeletons in the closet and a couple of crimes under his belt. Because from what I understand, there's a lot of racists who try to infiltrate the gun nut community. It's not the gun's fault, but they try to infiltrate the gun nut community, and then they try to make it to where it's like they say that they want the Second Amendment for everybody, but it's like they want to alienate black people and liberals who might want to be responsible gun owners too, because they don't want them to be protected. And these racists kind of want to turn the police into their death squads, and they kind of want to make sure that the only people who have guns are white people who are going to vote a certain way and who are going to basically be, the guns aren't there to overthrow a corrupt and tyrannical government. The guns are there to basically say, fuck you minorities, we're on the side of the tyrannical government who's going to kill you. Our guns are an extension of our privilege. When you realize that we're letting the government rape you or put you in concentration camps, the guns are to protect us from you rightly seeking revenge. And I'm not saying this as a liberal. Dave Champion warned against this happening, how a bunch of genuine racists, genuine Nazis are trying to infiltrate liberty-minded groups, as well as groups on the right wing, so that even if the people on the right wing aren't racist, they're unintentionally enabling things that work in the favor of the closet racists and the crypto-fascists. I say that as somebody trying to be very diplomatic to the right wing. I'm not trying to, I know that because I'm young and because I acknowledge that racism exists, that suddenly that makes me a far-left SJW snowflake. Meanwhile, if I bring up any conspiracy theories about Hollywood, suddenly, or if I criticize SJWs or the far-left feminists or Dr. Fauci, suddenly I'm an alt-right Nazi. So it's like, okay, am I a left-wing snowflake or am I an alt-right Nazi? What's it going to be? Anyway, I know, I digress. I'm sorry. Okay, so basically to recap, we have the pizza Brutality video. It kind of shows that the Ninja Turtles got just a bunch of military gear gutted from the government, and they just gave it to them, and it immediately went to their head. And even if somebody probably deserves to die, the way that they went about it was wrong and short-sighted. And then it shows after that little scene with Shredder, there's this gentleman, this young man, who looks really young, and he's smoking a cigarette by a pawn shop or something. And so they say, hey, you're not old enough to smoke cigarettes, and they shoot him with the hot flaming pizza that basically maims the guy. And they go up to him and they get his wallet and it says, oh snap, it says here that he's 19. And the young man's that they just accosted said, yeah, I'm a late bloomer. And then they're like, yeah, well, you shouldn't be smoking in the first place. So the thing is that it kind of shows that with the militarization of the police, even if the police were good, even if they didn't have a racist bone in their body, even if they meant well, and they weren't racist, that the militarization of the police will go to their heads, and they'll be like kids playing with a toy that they have no idea how to be responsible with. Because a lot of them don't get the proper training on how to use the military gear, and I don't know if I want them to have it in the first place, because I don't think that the police and military should fuse. The Founding Fathers didn't want a standing army, and I've talked to some people who warned against the rise of the warrior cop. Radley Balco's a good person to read about that. And I've talked to a person who's been both military and police and talked about why the two shouldn't mix. The two should exist, and the two should be respected, but they shouldn't mix, and they need to be held accountable whenever they screw up, because they're going to screw it up for everybody if they're not fixed. You should do it out of love for the police, because the police who are genuinely good, you need to protect them from hurting themselves. Because a lot of police right now are getting killed not from a Black Lives Matter person who went nuts, but more often from other cops who are poorly trained or might be corrupt. Anyway, the this thing from Pizza Brutality, it ends where the Ninja Turtles are watching television back in their sewer, and they start watching the TV. And the TV basically goes, oh no, is this an example of racism? We saw an incident of police brutality. Yes, it's an incident of police brutality. You know, the TV got that right. But then it said, is this racism against a minority? Are these police officers hating Asians? So they killed Shredder, and they probably shouldn't have done it, at least not that way. But then the media tries to make it all about race. Now, with police brutality, some of it's about race, some of it's always been about race, and that's something that needs to be fixed. But if you have an unhealthy obsession with the part about it that is technically racist, to the point to where you hijack the whole narrative and make it all about that, you are doing just as much damage as the people who deny racism even exist. It's kind of like with C.S. Lewis talking about demons. C.S. Lewis said that two things that you can do with demons that's wrong: deny that they exist, or have an unhealthy obsession with them. So, ironically, like Buddha said, the best path is usually the one in the middle, somewhere in the middle. Everything in moderation, including moderation. You can't always water down the edges and go straight down the line, but there's usually like a big circle in the center. That's usually the best place to favor. Sometimes you have to take a hard left, sometimes you have to take a hard right, but it's best to stick as close to a big encompassing center as possible. That's the safe zone that you want to favor, that you want to gravitate towards, even if you lean left, even if you lean right. And even the Bible says, stray not to the left and stray not to the right. A man of God avoids all extremes. I quoted Buddha too, so I'm not saying this as just from a theologian Christian point of view, but from a philosophical point of view. Now, to finish off what I said, the Ninja Turtles are watching the television. The television is taking something that they did wrong, but it's spinning it like it's all about race. And the Ninja Turtles are like, well, how can we be racist against Asians? We are Asian, because they're ninjas. And then one person says, nah, we're Italian, because they're named after Italian Renaissance painters. And then Shredder kindly says, you're fucking turtles, which is beautiful. So it ends on a good note. But it also brings up something about this whole police brutality, this whole police militarization thing, how all sides have contributed to it, how the moderates and casual conservatives have said it's not an issue. It is, obviously. How some people on the far right who are very, very authoritarian say the police are always justified. That's not always right. And some people on the left acknowledge that it's a problem, which is true, and I'm glad they do, but they want to hijack it and make it all about identity politics. And that can actually help make the police brutality thing worse, because if you make it all about left versus right and black versus white, then you're going to be the only persons complaining about it, and everybody else is going to think that it's just you having a problem with the police. And it's kind of like the whole defund the police thing. When they explain what their point is, they bring up a couple of good points, but it's a bad slogan that leaves a lot of room for people to misconstrue what you're saying. A better thing to say would have been demilitarize the police the police, reform the police accountability. And me, as part of that package, I would also make it to where the police got better pay and better benefits. They would be demilitarized, but they would also, once we raised the standards of them getting in and we ended the drug war and we demilitarized them, I would also want to pay them better so that they feel like, oh, snap, not only am I being paid better as a way of being appreciated, but also, if I fuck up, I've got more to lose. Maybe I'll behave myself and do the right thing because I had to work so hard to get this job because they raised the standards to get in based on morality and intelligence, and I'm getting paid better so that if I screw up, I could lose this job that I worked hard for that's paying so well. So I better behave. That's kind of one thing that's wrong with the police, because they don't pay the police well. They give them shitty training, and then they have a toxic atmosphere where the police don't feel appreciated, and they feel like the only people who care about them is the blue line and the rest of the world is their enemy, instead of trying to train them to be like Andy Griffith and see the community as an extension of their family. And that sets people up to hate them. And then whenever the police do screw up bad and they need to be punished, they tend to just get a 2 weeks vacation paid for by the American taxpayer expense. That not only makes it miserable to be a cop, especially a good one, that not only makes it miserable to do the right thing and to not feel welcomed and appreciated, but it also reduces the accountability. And it makes it easier for bad cops to hurt good cops. And it sets people up to want to kill cops. A lot of people want the police to be respected, but those same people say respect is earned. I respect the idea of law enforcement, and I try to be polite to police officers whenever I meet them. But the thing is, even if individual police officers are getting wrongfully disrespected by the left because they're not all bad, the thing is that if you want to know what's setting you up for failure, it's the people, it's the departments, how they run things and how they refuse to punish the bad apples, but also how they punish the good apples, because good cops come forward and they try to rat out the bad cops to fix the problem, and then they get punished. So you're being set up to have people want to kill you. You know, whenever some parents who are usually religious conservatives say, I would rather go to jail for spanking my kids than have my kids go to jail rather than spanking them. It's not right to shoot a cop. But at the same damn time, if you're setting up people who normally wouldn't even dream of that to go over the edge and do that, you have to take responsibility for your actions, and you have to realize that you could be setting up your police officers to be killed. Because, as the Bible says, spare not the rod, a lot of people apply that to the people that the police beat. But the thing is, the police are our children too. And the thing is, you don't want to be mean to them just because they're police or even because they screwed up, but because they need it. If the police aren't punished whenever they do something bad, they'll go on and do something so bad that somebody will take the law in their own hands and shoot a cop. I don't want that. I'm trying to prevent that. And I've gone on to like a little speech. This should have been 2 separate videos instead of 1. This was really meant to just be a very short video talking about this 4-minute Adult Swim Cartoon Network Robot Chicken episode that just calmly, simply, eloquently, humorously shows the point of what's wrong with police brutality. Now, there's several things that can be wrong with police brutality. One can be the racist aspect that's always been there. One can be that people join the police not because they're racist, but because they're opportunistic psychopaths looking for a way to be a socially accepted bully. Or that they see the police as just a legally socially acceptable gang, the biggest gang that they could join to be protected from the other gangs. But it's also another aspect that even if there weren't any psychopaths, even if there weren't any racists that joined the police for the wrong reasons, even if all of them were genuinely heroic individuals, like the Turtles, the way that they train and the way that they just give people gear that they're not ready for is very irresponsible. It goes against everything that responsible gun ownership that the right wing likes to brag about is for. It goes against everything that the right wing brags about being small government, personal responsibility, rule of law, Christian values. It goes against everything because even if those boys are still good at heart, foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. And a lot of people will say that about the left. A lot of people will say that about young people. But the thing is that if you're basically joining the police, you're kind of being born again for the police. So you have to be treated as a child, not of just of the state or the police department, but of the community. And I would say it with both tender and tough love that they need to be held to a higher standard based on morals and intelligence. But the thing is that I also wanted to point out that the left fucks this up too. Because if the left wing makes everything about race, you're going to alienate potential allies on the right and potential allies who are white. Because there's a lot of veterans who get mistreated by the police. There's a lot of veterans who are put on terrorist watch lists by the police. The police are trained not to trust constitutionalists. The police are trained not to trust gun owners. The police are trained not to trust veterans. You know, so you need to reach out to certain white people who've been done wrong too, and not blame everything on conservatism, and not blame everything on white people. Because there's some people who are very critical of the police, and then some people on the left made it about race to the point to where they started calling for a race war. It wasn't just people on the right who were calling for a race war. The left was too. And that whenever white people started complaining about being mistreated by the police, some people on the left said, you know what, you're white, check your privilege, you can suck a fat one, I hope you die. Not all of them, not even most of them, but some of them did. As we know, it's the dumbasses with the loudest voices on the internet that grab all the attention and show up in the news. If you could have 5 people who walked an old lady across the street like a good little Boy Scout, and then you have one person who walked around with his pants down and pissed on a stop sign, what's going to make the news? What's going to make the news? Now you know what I'm talking about. So the thing is that this is Ace and Beaky. I highly suggest that you gentlemen, you watch that short on Adult Swim, that you watch that Robot Chickens short. You can find it on YouTube. And I think it eloquently points out how that, yes, police brutality is a thing. A lot of it is based about the militarization of it, though. Some of it is based on race, but for the parts that aren't based on race, don't try to hijack it so that you can promote your left-wing agenda either. Don't, the right wing tries to promote their agenda that way, but the left wing, whenever they virtue signal behind black people, but they do it in a way that alienates people in the center, you're not against police brutality. You want it to be around so that you can feed off of it to go into your identity politics. So the fact that the left wing tries to make the whole problem with the police all about race actually makes it worse and contributes to it, and they should know better. Anyway, this is Ace and Beaky. I'm so glad you stopped by to listen. If you made it past these 30 minutes that went longer and were more chaotic than I thought they should be, I appreciate your time, and God bless you. I wish you the best. Take care.